So it has been a while since we featured any Nike trail running shoes on the channel, and in fact it was around about a year ago when I laced up their updated Zigama 2s. Now if you're an OG follower of the channel and you've been supporting us for some time, you'll know that I've definitely had a checkered history when it comes to running products from the Nike trail running department, and I have been left pretty disappointed after testing out several of their shoes, including the super overhyped Ultraflys, which definitely left me very disappointed, and also the Terra Kiger 7s, which actually offered me 0 levels of traction from the outsole when I was running in slightly muddy conditions. So it has been a bit of a bumpy ride, a bit of a roller coaster with the Nike trail running shoes. However, it's going to be very interesting to test out the latest version of the Kiger, the Terra Kiger 10s today, because there has been a lot of changes and updates over the years. So let's dive into the video and find out how they perform. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run for Adventure. Now, if you're new to the channel or you're new to our first impressions videos, what we normally do is give you the lowdown on the new shoe. So we'll give you some facts and figures, you know, price point, heel offset, weight, things like that. Then I'll break down the new construction in a bit more detail, highlighting all the things that have changed in the latest model. And then I'm going to be getting them on my feet, lacing them up and bringing you guys all along on the first run. So the Kiger model by Nike has always been their sort of lighter, more nimble, responsive trail running shoe in their lineup. And actually, on the latest version, they've written Nike Trail Racing on the inside of the midsole. So there you go. But my pair in a UK 9.5 tips the scales at 283 grams. So, you know, it's not a super light trail running shoe, but it's definitely not heavy. And they run off a new Cushlow 3.0 foam midsole with a 5mm heel offset. So you get a stack height of 29mm at the heel, 24mm under the forefoot, and I got mine in this rather unusual glacier blue field purple colorway. Now, the reason I went for this option was because one of the others was an all black, which looked a bit boring if I'm honest, and you could also get them in a predominantly white with red highlights. Now, I'm not a massive fan of a white trail running shoe, especially here in the UK, so blue and purple it was. When it comes down to the construction, Nike have gone with this rather unusual looking sort of mesh fabric for the upper, and it really does remind me of those sort of weaved wicker dining room chairs you used to get in the 70s and 80s, and yep, I'm definitely showing my age there, but feels quite coarse to touch and quite stiff, so going to be interesting to see how comfortable that feels on today's run. But it definitely looks like it will be nice and breathable because there's lots of small perforations all over the upper, and that should really help when it comes to airflow. There's a very thin gusseted tongue design in the Kiger 10, so pretty much 0 padding, although Nike have worked this bit of branding down the center of that tongue, so that should offer the top of my foot a little bit of protection when I pull those laces down nice and tight to get a good lockdown around my midfoot. Although I would have rather seen some nice zonal padding down the center of the tongue. I think that would have offered a bit more protection. And then on the flip side, we've got a nicely padded ankle collar and heel cup, and we've also got a good bit of substance from a structural heel cup as well. So heel hold and support should be pretty good. The lacing system looks pretty standard to me, but we do have these very interesting looking sort of rubberized overlays. So working up there on the lateral side to the laces and wrapping around the toe box, just to give this soft upper construction a bit more substance. And unfortunately, no upfront protection in the shape of a toe bumper. So if I push into the toe of the shoe, it is very, very soft. So that is going to offer no protection at all. So the Terra Kiger 10 is definitely a trail shoe. You don't want to stub your toe on a rock while you're moving at speed out on the trails. Moving down to the midsole setup, and we are seeing some big changes here as well when we compare the latest version to the previous Terra Kiger 9. So in the previous version, Nike went with their very popular React foam in the midsole setup. You know, I was a big fan of that foam. I think it offered a nice cushioned energy returning ride. However, this time round, they are going with their Cushlow 3.0 foam, which I've actually never heard of, and I'm pretty sure they've never used it in one of their trail running shoes. I could be wrong, but I don't think they have. To be fair, pushing into it, it does feel very similar to that React foam anyway. And Nike have also worked in their 4-foot stone shield. So this is going to offer the runner a bit more underfoot protection when you're running on rocky, sharp trails. And then finishing up with the all-important outsole, and you've probably noticed it already by seeing the little Vibram logo there on the midsole. And yep, the Terra Kiger 10 is the first version of the Kiger shoe to be clad in Vibram super sticky mega grip rubber, which can only be a good thing, because I have definitely had a few sketchy moments when I've been running in Nike trail shoes on wet, rocky trails. You know, some of the rubber compounds they've used in the past have been pretty dangerous, let's put it that way. So the fact that we've got Vibram Mega Grip rubber introduced to the Kiger model can only be a good thing, and I think it's really going to up the levels of all-round trail performance. Although not the most aggressive of lugs on that outsole at 3 to 3.5 mil, so these are definitely not a trail shoe that you're going to be reaching for in those wet, muddy months. And I would say that the Kiger 10 are more of a spring, summer, autumn shoe when hopefully the trails are a lot drier. But I still think it's super positive to see another Nike trail running shoe with Vibram Mega Grip rubber on the outsole. You can also see that outsole is sort of split into 3 sections with this long flex groove working down the heel section, and what that allows is for that midsole to be nice and flexible. So I think they're going to feel nice and sort of responsive and nimble out on the trails. But I guess there's only one way to find out, and that is by taking the new Terra Kiger 10s from Nike out for a spin. So we'll see you guys out on the trails.
I don't know whether you can see them, you might be able to hear them. There is a massive swarm of bees up there. The noise. I thought, what's that noise? Looked up. Bees everywhere. Right, I think I might go another way.
So we are 3.38 miles into the run, and it has been eventful. So I showed you we had that swarm of bees across the path, so I had to run away and find another way onto the towns. And then literally as I made it onto the trails, I got an email telling me that I had a delivery, so I had to run all the way back home to get the delivery. Even worse than that, it actually never showed up, so I still haven't had the delivery I'm waiting for. But we're out here, we're on the towns, and we have another glorious day here in Cornwall. Shoe wise, well, the Terra Kiger 10 is fitting true to size, like I find with pretty much every Nike running shoe that I've run in. I've never had to go down a size or up half a size or anything like that. So yeah, definitely true to size. I would say width in the toe box is kind of average. I wouldn't say it's narrow, I wouldn't say it's wide, but it does taper in quite tightly at the toe. And I've got a really nice secure lockdown around my midfoot and a really good hold in the heel. I did have a few concerns about that very thin gusseted tongue before we started running, but that little bit of branding they've worked down the centre of it seems to be doing a good job and offering a nice bit of protection when it comes to pulling those laces down nice and tight. So far so good in the upper. Like I said, it's got that unusual sort of woven fabric that's been used and feels nice and airy and pretty breathable, and it is quite warm for the UK today. But we're going to try and get in our usual 7 to 8 miles on today's test run. So like I said, 3.3 miles so far. So let's crack on, let's get this test run done.
Okay, we are coming towards the end of a pretty odd run, if I'm honest. So what with almost getting attacked by a swarm of bees, having to cut back home to try and receive a parcel that never showed up, and late last night I started to get a bit of toothache, so it's pretty bad through the night. Didn't get a lot of sleep, so hasn't been the most comfortable of rides. So shoe's been all right, but the tooth has definitely been a bit painful. Just like I thought back at home with that outsole setup, the midsole on the Kiger 10 has felt nice and flexible, which means it's felt responsive and nimble, but it does feel like a pretty stripped back shoe though. You know, it's got a 5mm heel offset, but I would say it feels a little bit lower than that, if anything. And again, cushioning in the midsole, not a lot of it, so it does feel quite firm, which means you feel close to the ground and connected. But lately, I've been running in the Pediceo Pro, Trailfly Max and the VJ Ultra 3, so this does feel a little bit undercushioned. Okay, so that is just over 7.5 miles done, so it's going to be 8 miles by the time we get back home. But let's go back, let's wrap this video up with a quick conclusion, and I'm going to grab some ibuprofen and sort this toothache out.
So, had an enjoyable first run in the Terra Kiger 10s, apart from the odd drama along the way, and I actually managed to clock up 8.53 miles by the time I got home. So, pretty decent mileage in a brand new shoe, straight out the box. So, a good test for the shoe. I also think you could see from the footage there it was dry out on the trails, and I actually think it was perfect conditions underfoot for these. So we had some nice compacted trails, we had some loose stony pathways, lots of soft sand obviously, and a good section of tarmac to get to the trails, and the Terra Kiger 10 handled them all well. I enjoyed the fit and feel of the upper, and like a lot of Nike running shoes, seemed to work well for my foot shape. So we got a decent level of padding and structure around the ankle collar and in the heel cup, and even that thin gusseted tongue design didn't cause me any issues. But I would say the standout feature when it comes to the upper is this unusual looking woven kind of lattice fabric that Nike have used in the construction, and you know, it made the upper feel nice and light and airy on today's run, which is definitely a positive thing, because in the past I have found some of the uppers on Nike trail shoes to be a little bit bulky, and they can run quite warm as well, whereas the upper on the Kiger 10 felt nice and breathable today. So all in all, the upper performed well and had no rubbing or any discomfort or anything like that. But moving down to the midsole setup, I'm not so sure. So like I mentioned before we went out on the run, Nike have chosen to move away from their very popular React foam in the midsole setup of the Kiger, and they've gone with this Cushlon 3.0 foam, which I've actually never heard of before, and I'm really surprised that they would use it in this sort of long-standing Kiger trail model. Now, you know, I wouldn't say it was uncomfortable out there on the trails. It performed okay, but it just didn't seem to give me a lot of pop or bounce, and if I'm honest, it did run a little bit flat. I picked up the pace a few times on the run just to see how that midsole foam would react to a quicker tempo, and I really didn't get a lot back from it. You know, overall, the shoe felt pretty nimble and responsive, but that midsole foam was a little bit lackluster, and especially for a shoe that Nike say has been developed for sort of performance and racing in mind. And what with the crazy world of running shoe innovation and develop moving at a really quick rate of knots these days, I can't help but think that the Kiger 10 has kind of been left behind when it comes to the midsole department, and they did feel a little bit old school. Now don't get me wrong, there's definitely a place for this, because what it gives you is a trail running shoe that you feel nice and close to the ground in, gives you good connection so you feel stable when you're running on more uneven technical ground. And at the end of the day, not everybody wants a deeply cushioned trail running shoe. Personally for me, I would like a little bit more depth of cushioning under the forefoot, and I also like to feel like I'm getting a little bit of energy return from the foam in the midsole. So wrapping up after today's run, and I really did enjoy the fit, feel and performance of this new upper design, and it was actually really nice to run in a Nike trail running shoe where you can see some thought has gone into the upper functionality and breathability, rather than it just being designed for looks and not performance, like with some of their shoes in the past. However, the jury still is out on this midsole setup, and I'm just not convinced the right way to go was this Cushlon 3.0 foam. You know, it did feel a little bit flat, it didn't feel like it had a lot of pop or energy return, and you know, all-round performance wasn't great, so I can't say I'm a big fan. And it does really feel like this nicely designed, top-performing upper has been slightly let down by this flat-feeling midsole. And on that bombshell, it brings today's first impressions video to an end. Really hope you enjoyed it, really hope you found it helpful. Obviously, these are just my initial thoughts after today's 8-mile run, so it'd be great to hear from you guys. So if you picked yourself up a pair of the new Kiger 10s and you've clocked up some decent mileage, get in the comments below, let us know how the shoe is feeling and performing for you. But until next time, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting the channel, it's always appreciated. We'll be back with some more interesting running content very soon, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. Moving down to the midsole setup, and we are seeing some big changes here as well when we compare the latest version to the previous Terra Kiger 9s. Now, the Terra Kiger 9 opted for you... But until next time, guys, thanks for watching. It's always appreciated. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It was actually really nice to run in a Nike trail shoe where you can see that the uppers